If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibrations. Nikola Tesla. This profound quote is one that has nested in my mind since the first time I read it. What does he mean by the secrets of the universe? What is the relationship between energy, frequency, and vibrations? As I am not a scientist, I cannot approach this topic with the precision that someone of Nikola Tesla's caliber would be able to. But from my novice understanding of this quote, Tesla is implying that understanding energy is integral towards understanding our physical reality. It's all about energy, you see. Energy is what makes the sun shine, what makes the flowers bloom, what makes the ocean waves. Wait, ocean waves? Waves. Is it not true that the commonality between frequency and vibrations is that they are measured in waves? What is a wave? A wave is a disturbance or vibration that transfers energy progressively from point to point. Perhaps Tesla is saying that through understanding how energy is created, we can understand the language of the universe. And to understand the language of the universe, we must understand that frequency and vibrations are the letters of the universe, which give form and energy to our physical reality. Okay, would it be far-fetched then to say that if frequency and vibrations are the alphabet to the universal language that is energy, wouldn't waves be the phonetics? In other words, wouldn't waves be how we sound out those letters? Just as we measure the use of letters and words through sound, we measure energy through waves. But okay, I know what you're thinking. Tesla, energy, waves? Okay, I know it may not make sense now, but lately I've been kept up at night thinking, what the heck is this ancient energy source that Vegapunk brings up in chapter 1068? And through a series of late night shower thoughts, I've arrived at a theory that the ancient energy is none other than water. Yes, water. Hence my cryptic intro on the connection between energy and waves. Like, I quite literally think the ancient energy has a lot to do with ocean waves. In the world of One Piece, where water is so abundant and such a powerful force, would it not make sense for it to be a practical source of energy? It fits all the criteria of Vegapunk's dream of providing the world with energy. A source of energy that is all around us that anyone will be able to access. There is water in the air, water in our oceans, springs, and rivers. Water is so abundant, it covers 75% of the surface of our Earth. And in the One Piece world, it most likely covers 90% of their world. So in this video, I will be exploring the very fantastical and very intriguing idea that water was the energy source of the ancient kingdom this whole time. So how do I arrive at such a ludicrous conclusion that the ancient energy source is water? Well, Franky, of course. Our lovable super cyborg who is only second to Vegapunk as the greatest engineer in the world. Throughout this video, I'll be outlining how Franky has laid out the clues of what the ancient energy source is from the very beginning. See, it all started with what I previously thought the ancient energy was, Franky's cola. The idea that Franky's cola is the ancient energy source is a fringe idea, but it's not a new idea. If you look deep enough on some Reddit forums, it's an idea that is fairly explored and not without good reason. You see, the most credible reason as to why cola would be the ancient energy source is because of chapter 1090. In that chapter, we get some very interesting dialogue between Franky and Vegapunk as they are discussing escaping using the Sunny's coup de burst. Concerning this method of escape, Vegapunk said, "You mean to say your ship can fly that far? Unbelievable." To which Franky replied, "Yes, it's powered by cola." Then what's interesting here is that Vegapunk replies in a surprise as he says, "Cola?" Through his surprised expression, it becomes clear that Vegapunk has never heard of cola as a power source. This is the basis behind the cola is the ancient power source theory. The fact that it is the only power source that is completely unknown to Vegapunk gives a huge possibility that it's the source he's been looking for all along. If you think about it, it fits all the criteria, a source that no modern scientist would consider, that escapes conventional logic and would be much cheaper and more sustainable to make than any other energy source. So mystery over, right? Wrong. See, there's a huge flaw in this theory. Cola is not a substance that only Franky has access to. It's not special at all. In fact, in Eni's lobby, Franky was able to casually buy cola in a bar. Also, cola is a very modern creation. so it definitely doesn't fit the criteria of an energy source that is ancient at all. If cola was the ancient energy source, it would suggest that it's not simply cola, but rather the machines of the ancient kingdoms were specially designed to process cola as an efficient energy. So I'm gonna stop myself real quick. Notice how this depiction of the robot has some sort of steam engine in his back that seems to be emanating some type of what looks like smoke, but what I think is actually steam, which may give more credence to the idea that the ancient robots did use water as some form of energy. Which is not far-fetched considering the wacky world of One Piece. But still, it doesn't mean cola is the revolutionary source Vegapunk speaks of. But what it does mean is that the ancient kingdom's machinery was specially designed to process liquids as energy. But not specifically cola, because again, cola is not a scientifically efficient energy source at all. But stay with me down this train of thought, because the possibility that ancient kingdom's machinery was specifically designed to use liquids as energy is the biggest clue Franky gives us. See, it's not exactly cola that's the clue, it's actually Franky himself. It's Franky that can somehow engineer his body to make cola work as an energy source. But have we ever stopped to consider whether Franky can use other liquids as energy as well, not just cola? Well, there is no need for speculation because we actually have evidence that Franky has used another liquid as a form of energy. I'm sure most of you may have missed this, but when Franky got transported to Vegapunk's island, something very interesting occurred in the anime. After arriving on the island, Franky was found injured and in need of operation, and a few scientists were able to help put him back together. But here's the kicker. When fixing Franky, they realized that he used cola as his power source, and they didn't have any cola available. So what did they do? They used an alternative. Now get this, the alternative they used was tea. Yes, like herbal tea. What's interesting here is that the tea actually worked to fuel Franky. Not only did the tea actually work as a power source for Franky, but it seemingly changed his personality to a more fancy and cordial version of himself, as opposed to his usual boisterous self. Now, when I first watched this, I just laughed it off as a funny gag, but then I was like, wait, is this simply a gag, or is Oda trying to tell us something serious hidden within a gag? I mean, think about it for a sec. Why would tea work as a power source at all for Franky? Unless Franky can use different liquids as a power source and he just happened to choose cola simply because cola is his favorite drink. It makes you wonder, if he can use tea and cola, what else can he use? This thought process brought me back to a moment in the story where we've actually seen Franky use different liquids as fuel. In Franky's fight against Fukuro in Eni's lobby, he was running out of fuel, so Chopper helps him out by fetching some cola in the fridge for him. See, the gag is, Chopper throws him different drinks such as vegetable juice and tea instead of cola, and Franky rejects each one. But the gem hidden behind the gag here is that Franky processes all of these liquids as fuel based on his reaction. His body didn't reject it, it simply, like before, made him act slightly different. His explanation for not wanting to use them is that they didn't make him as strong as cola. But I wonder, how else would he react to more liquids? And trust me, I'm not the only one curious about this. Apparently, even Chopper wants to see how Franky would react to different liquids. I believe this piece of dialogue was an intentional clue from Oda that Franky does indeed react differently depending on the liquids as we see. So of course, this got me thinking, could there be a liquid that makes him even stronger than cola? And this led to the most important question of them all. What is the common denominator of tea and cola? Well, to make either of those drinks, you first need what? Water. It's possible that from the very beginning, Franky's body has been engineered to use any form of water as a power source. The idea sounds weird at first, but as we uncover more clues, it starts to sound more plausible. Starting from way back when Franky built his first body. In chapter 358, we learned that Franky was able to build himself a body from the equipment he found in an abandoned ship. What's interesting is that some people, including myself, have made the connection that this ship may be the abandoned mad ships of Vegapunk's group. Now, why is this important? Well, Vegapunk during his tenure with Mads was researching ancient technology, and it's very possible that they may have been some amazing technology Franky used to rebuild his body that's been inspired by Vegapunk's research of the ancient kingdom or the ancient robot. Which is so funny, I might add, because Franky simply said he rebuilt himself with some scrap metal he found on a ship. Like, now that I really think about it, I'm quite sure that wasn't just some random ship, and I'm quite sure that wasn't some random scrap metal. Even if you don't believe that this ship was indeed the mad ship, it's clear that no normal ship in the story would have the equipment necessary to help you rebuild your body as a cyborg. In fact, most of the ships in One Piece are entirely made of wood, so chances are this was indeed a ship with advanced technology due to the amount of metal it had. See, what I'm proposing here is that Franky was able to rebuild his body with the remnants of Vegapunk's research. But is this enough to suggest that the ancient energy is water? Well, no. I think there is a much more stronger piece of evidence that leads us towards that conclusion. You see, Franky later on got even more access to ancient technology through the blueprints of the anti-Pluton. In chapter 358, it was revealed that Iceberg entrusted the blueprints of the anti-Pluton to Franky very early on. Now, we know that the anti-Pluton blueprints has been used as a failsafe to combat the Pluton, and its blueprints have been passed down through many generations of shipbuilders, most likely dating all the way back to the Void Century. Now, why is this important? Well, it's very likely that the blueprints of the anti-Pluton contain the knowledge of how the ancient kingdom built their technology, and most importantly, the fuel source they used for their tech. If this is true, then Franky may have already read how to build and fuel ancient technology. But is this relevant when we know that Franky burned the Pluton blueprints? Well, let's consider why he was able to casually burn those blueprints. It's almost as if he's confident that all the knowledge he's learned from the blueprints has already been stored in his memory, and most importantly has already been replicated by Franky himself. And what better way to practice the usefulness of ancient technology other than using it to build his own cyborg body? I believe that through the blueprints of the Pluton, Franky has engineered himself to mimic the ancient technology of the ancient kingdom. The byproduct of this that we can observe is that Franky can fuel himself with something that not even the greatest scientists of the modern era can fathom. But wait, doesn't that lead back to the idea that the ancient fuel source is cola, since Franky may have gotten the idea from the anti-Pluton blueprints? Well, not exactly. It could very well be that Franky doesn't fully understand the ancient technology 100%. He may have engineered his body to use liquid as an energy source, but through his simple-mindedness, use cola instead of water. It is also likely that the blueprint of the anti-Pluton does not specify or mention that water is the ancient energy source. Rather, they only include the mechanical ingredients towards building the anti-Pluton. And Franky was able to understand through his knowledge of engineering that the best way to fuel ancient technology is through some form of liquid. But even as sound as this hypothesis sounds, it's still pure speculation, right? We don't exactly know what the anti-Pluton is or how it's made. But allow me to prove to you why everything we've been told about the ancient technology thus far all leads back to water. Let's first consider who passed down the blueprints of the anti-Pluton. Tom, Iceberg and Franky's mentor. Now, why is this important to analyze that Tom is the one who gave us the blueprints to the anti-Pluton? Well, Tom is a Fishman. Wait, I'm not a race baiter. There's actually a very important reason I bring Tom's race up in the context of water being the ancient energy. Tom being a Fishman matters because it's quite likely that the anti-Pluton blueprints was passed down through the Fishmen. This is important because if water was the ancient energy source, who better to understand this than Fishmen who can manipulate water and understand water deeper than anyone else? You may think I'm reaching here, but this detail I will soon highlight would give this idea an added layer of credibility. You see, there's another piece of technology that we can connect to the Fishmen. the ancient robot on Egghead Island. In chapter 1066, we learned that the ancient robot is a huge source of wonder for Dr. Vegapunk. Although he's been researching it for years, he can't quite find what fuel source it uses. But let's see if we can put together the clues faster than Vegapunk has been able to. See, we also learned in that chapter that the robot climbed the red line to get to Marijoa, then shortly after it ran out of fuel. But the most interesting thing we learn about this event is through Robin's dialogue. In that chapter, Robin points out that the robot climbing the red line directly lines up to the time the movement of the Fishmen equality begin. This detail I believe is very important because it sets up a direct link to the ancient robot and the history of Fishmen. But why would the ancient robot climbing the red line directly correlate with the better treatment of Fishmen? Well, I theorize that the ancient robot we see in Egghead was made by Fishman engineers long ago, which is why the ancient robot climbing the red line somehow may have impacted Fishman rights in a positive direction. It may also be intended by the creator of the ancient robot to be used as a weapon against the enemies of Fishmen. Now, we can't say for sure, but if you consider that the anti-Pluton was made by a Fishman, the dots begin to connect, especially if you factor in the idea that the ancient energy was indeed water, since understanding water is the specialty of Fishmen. But can we validate this idea to what we know about the ancient robot? Well, consider that the ancient robot ran out of fuel when it got to the top of Marijoa. This is perhaps the biggest clue we have about ancient energy because it implies that this energy can run out. But would an energy source that is implied to be so efficient run out so quickly after a mere climb? That doesn't sound like a supreme fuel source at all. So what can we observe about the nature of the ancient energy from this detail? Well, it's possible that the energy ran out due to a change in environment when the robot got on top of the red line. See, I've been able to make this deduction through what Vegapunk said about energy being all around us. Vegapunk's dream is to make all the energy around us accessible and free. So what if the ancient technology's usage of energy directly lines up with Vegapunk's dream? Perhaps the technology of the ancient kingdom, such as the ancient robot, had the capability to harness the energy in their environment and use it as an abundant fuel source. Just think about it. If the ancient energy was indeed water, then this would make so much sense. With that mechanism in place, the ancient technologies would harness the water vapor all around our environment to replenish their water reserves easily. This would be the very definition of an almost endless energy source that especially fits a world that is completely surrounded by water like the One Piece planet. But I know some of you may be thinking, wait, we've seen the ancient robot's eye glow when Luffy turned to Gear 5th and it heard the drums of liberation. Wouldn't it make more sense that Luffy/Nika is more connected to the ancient energy? Well, yes, but this doesn't invalidate the theory that the ancient energy source is water. Because even if Nika's heartbeat awoke the ancient robot, that doesn't mean it has anything to do with its fuel source. Nika's heartbeat may be just the jumpstart, but the fuel source itself is different. Think about it this way. If you want to jumpstart up a car, you need another car and jumper cable to connect to the electrical currents and the car starts. But just because a car needs electricity to start does not mean that electricity is the fuel source. In the very same vein, the ancient robot's true fuel source that keeps it going is what I speculate to be water, while Nika's heartbeat may play a part in at least waking it up. But Nika's heartbeat is not at all what sustains it, as we see Luffy going in and out of Gear 5th in the latest chapters, but the ancient robot keeps chugging on. But okay, could this just be headcanon, or can we observe these clues that validate this hypothesis? Well, let's go back again to why exactly the robot ran out of fuel. See, if the ancient fuel is indeed water and the robot has the capability to harness water vapor around it, then this gives us the answer as to why it ran out of fuel. You see, it's all about altitude. The red line is very high up. Now, did you know a common characteristic of the environment of very high altitude places is that there is less water vapor? Let me explain with science. At higher elevations, like in mountains, the air is what we call rarefied. This means the air is thinner and drier because of lower atmospheric pressure and adiabatic cooling. These factors cause the air to hold less moisture, resulting in drier conditions compared to lower elevation. You see what I'm getting at here? The very high altitude of the red line doesn't allow enough water in the air for the robot to gather and use as fuel. So when he got on top of the red line, he immediately ran out of fuel. Doesn't that make way too much sense to completely deny? Now let's add another layer of credibility to this. Have you ever considered why the celestial dragons were wearing those spacesuits even if they are in Marijoa? See, this lines up perfectly with the scientific explanation of the red line having very low atmospheric pressure and less moisture in the air. See, when people climb very tall mountains, it becomes very hard to breathe because of this reason. The air is very dry and the level of oxygen in the air is lower as well. So it naturally follows that if the celestial dragons spend their whole life on top of the red line, they would need a suit to supply them with enough oxygen. So if this is the case, Oda has established the idea that the red line has low atmospheric pressure and thus lower oxygen and humidity from the very beginning of the story. Are you convinced yet? If you also think about it, Emu himself may have been in competition with the ancient technology and the ancient kingdom, so he may have built the red line on the very top because he knows how their technology works. Are you convinced yet? Well, if you're not, allow me to add yet another layer of credibility to this hypothesis that the ancient robot used water from the environment as a fuel source. Let's go back to the possibility that the Fishmen built the ancient robot. Remember, the Fishmen also have the ability to use the moisture in the air and concentrate it to make it water. In chapter 629, Jinbei explains that the essence of Fishman karate is the control of water. The shock waves pulsate through the water in the air and in the body. Through Fishman karate, Fishmen can utilize the water around them as long as there is water in the air. Now imagine if they use that very same mechanism as inspiration to build their own ancient robot with the same capability. See, it all lines up. The Fishmen built the ancient robot and possibly many other advanced tech such as the anti-Pluton. They passed anti-Pluton blueprints through Fishman shipwrights up until Tom, who then passed the blueprints to Franky, who then used those same blueprints when experimenting with himself and possibly with the Sunny, which allowed both Franky and the Sunny to use any water-based liquid such as cola or even tea, because at the very base, it's water that they're supposed to use. But Franky's usage of cola is just a rudimentary usage of the true capabilities of ancient technology that can only be realized once you use water. And we could observe the dependency of water that the ancient robot had based on it losing fuel on high altitudes. The ancient energy all along was water. And now that I think about it, there's a huge clue we've been given in Franky's introduction. Remember, we were introduced to Franky on an island called Water 7. Now, why is this of supreme importance? You see, Oda is a huge fan of numerology. Numerology is the study in the belief in an occult, divine, or mystical relationship between a number and one or more coinciding events. Throughout the story, we can observe numbers being used to give us hints about the story. We've seen a very direct hint of Oda's usage of numerology in the recent chapters with the number 56. 56 is a number that we've seen connected to Luffy since the beginning of Egghead. It's the number in his futuristic fit. Many people have deduced that the number 56 is a play on the Japanese word for Gomu Gomu, which is Luffy's fruit. Now 56 shows up yet again in chapter 1111 when Luffy uses a baseball bat to hit the Gorosei's poison balls. If you look closely, we clearly see that Luffy painted the number 56 on his baseball bat as well as his hat. Also in numerology, the number 56 possesses qualities associated with independence, ambition, and progress, which summarize Luffy's character overall. An ambitious being, a progressive being, and an independent being. Oda's emphasis on this number connecting to Luffy is everything we need to know about how much he loves using numbers as clues within the story. So why is this important? Well, I believe the very same thing is being done in the name Water 7. Let's focus on the number 7. The number 7 has always been believed to be a divine number in some biblical interpretations. It is a very sacred number since it's observed that God built the world in 6 days and then God rested on the 7th day. 7 is a godly number and all things connected to the number 7 are often seen as divine. So according to Oda's usage of numerology, Water 7 directly translates to divine water or godly water. Even the city of Water 7 is amongst the most advanced cities we've seen in One Piece in terms of infrastructure and technology. There's even more focus on water being a powerful theme in Water 7. Think about it, Water 7 is a city that is built on a sinking island and occasionally floods due to Aqua Laguna. So the citizens have built the island in such a way that where they can use water to their advantage. It may very well be that the ancient kingdom was the very same way, insofar that they built their city around using water as a natural and efficient energy source in all aspects of life. If we really think about it, this makes the most sense for the ancient kingdom to be in a completely symbiotic relationship with the natural world. Besides, wouldn't that be what a utopia would look like in our world? Instead of using non-renewable resources and fire combustion, we would instead use natural energy like solar and water. Now, let's take this idea of a symbiotic technological relationship with water to a whole new level to close out this theory. The biggest clue we have that the ancient kingdom based their technology on the natural environment is none other than the Den Mushi snails. Have you ever wondered what the heck are the Den Mushi snails and why do they have so many different technological capabilities? There are snails for communicating, there are snails for broadcasting a television screen, there are snails that can even eavesdrop on other communications, and there are snails that can be as loud as speakers. I know many of us may think of the Den Mushi as just anime logic, but it's possible that there is something much more connected to the narrative. See, it's quite possible that the ancient kingdom used Den Mushi as another natural technology that coincides with their usage of water, especially when you consider that Den Mushi are based on sea snails that thrive underwater. Another great example we have of natural technology based on the water is in Skypiea with dhows. If you remember, dhows are shell-like objects that are used to store energy and matter. There's dhows that store heat, air, and even clouds. Dhows are very similar to Den Mushi insofar that they are both naturally occurring things you can find in the sea, or in other words, water. See, it all goes back to water-based technology. Water is the godly source of One Piece, which makes everything possible. So what better way to make the most advanced tech than with the most renewable energy than to use water? But okay, if this is all true, if it is the case that water is the energy source that the ancient robot needs, why does it seem like the ancient robot is up and moving now without any water? Well, here's the final string that ties this whole theory together. See, as I mentioned, Luffy's heartbeat may be the jumpstart for the ancient robot, but if water is the fuel, where is it getting it from? Well, for starters, if the ancient robot can harness water vapor all around it, similar to Fishmen karate, it's possible that all it needed was a jumpstart to start doing that without any help. But I believe there's a very important event that took place that may give us more clues on why the ancient robot is now up and walking. It all goes back to when a previous destructive technology was used in the story, the Mother Flame. The Mother Flame was the mysterious technology used by Imu to destroy Lucia completely and erase it from existence. But the aftermath of using the weapon is what I believe is the most important detail. We learn in chapter 1089 that after the Mother Flame was used, there were earthquakes recorded all across the world due to the sheer seismic impact of using the Mother Flame. The event is very rarely talked about, but it is very important because this actually changed the whole landscape of the One Piece world forever. See, after this happened, the average sea level of the One Piece world became much higher. We get panels of people all over the world reacting to their houses and islands being completely flooded. Even Ivankov complained that they can no longer run on the beach because it is submerged by water. The sea levels got so high that even some islands began to completely sink in the sea as a result. Now, why is this important? Well, if the ancient energy is water and the reason that the ancient robot couldn't move is because it ran out, well, what happens when rising sea levels make seawater much more abundant? What happens when sea levels get so high that water can even wash up on shore and submerge beaches and islands? What happens when an ancient robot fueled by seawater directly makes contact with the elevated seawater? The ancient robot sensed seawater all around it and was able to use the water to charge the system and begin to move. That's right, just as rising altitudes decrease the ancient robot's access to water, rising water levels now have inversely increased the ancient robot's access to water at Egghead. Water all along was the ancient energy of the ancient kingdom and the secret energy source that Vegapunk has been looking for all along. Isn't that so awesome? It was something as simple as water. It all makes sense. Even in our real world, water is the source of all life. It's the reason Earth has life and the other planets don't. It's a thing that we drink to give energy, and without water-based technology like steam engines, the Industrial Revolution wouldn't be the same. Water is so awesome. Oh, you know what else would be really awesome? Like, what if in our real world water can be used as fuel, like for our cars? I mean, Tesla did say the secret of the universe is waves. What if he was trying to tell us that water is what we need to fuel our very own advanced society in the modern age? Wouldn't that be crazy? I mean, people have used water to fuel machines before, right? FBI, open up! Wait, someone's at the door. Oh no, guys, I may have said too much. Never mind, water isn't the ancient energy source at all. It's the petroleum and gasoline, it's fire. Forget everything I've said, I gotta go. Middleweight out. Okay, all jokes aside, I'd like to close out this theory with a very interesting detail about Franky's last fight that gives this a whole new level of credibility. Well, it wasn't much of a fight, but in chapter 112, Franky one-shotted Vice Admiral Red King with his famous strong right. Why does this matter, you may ask? Well, pay close attention to the naming scheme of Red King's attack. He started off by naming his attack Steam, and we can see a steam of water in the back of his mechanical arm as he's unloading his next attack. This to me is a direct hint of what I've been saying about the usage of water as a power source. But what I believe Oda wants to emphasize here is that while Red King uses water and steam as a power source, the technology in his arm is not up to par with Franky's advanced ancient tech. It is Franky who can truly take advantage of water power, which is why he defeated him with no difficulty. That's the theory, guys. Hope I made all of you Franky fans proud, and make sure to drink some water today. Middleway out.